Oh, I have an incredible episode for you today, Midlife Mavens. So I and my Soul Synarchy partners, Maggie Thomas and Dr. Johanneke Kodde, sat down with Shayna, Cornelius, Nichols, and Dana Stiles of Dayluna. And we chatted about the wild woman archetype, and through the lens of human design, how do we access the wild woman archetype? And listen, Dana and Shayna are incredible. They've been such a key part of my own human design journey. I binged their podcast. If you've not listened to the Dayluna podcast, it's a beautiful podcast full of useful, practical information about human design that they just communicate in their own special, beautiful way, which you'll hear on today's pod. Not only do they have a podcast, though, they have so many other ways to access their beautiful wisdom around human design. They have human design ritual kits. They have parenting blueprints. They also do readings themselves. They have reader trainings, video courses. They have a book out called Your Human Design. And they also lead retreats, which I feel so blessed to have been able to participate in their retreat last year in April, which is how I met Maggie and Johanneke to begin with. So we are going to talk about their retreat that's coming up in Egypt in April, which is an epic journey, and just like why it's so important to take the time to retreat, even if you don't go on a retreat, but just rest in general. We talk a lot about that. We talk about resistance and talk about how we can access the wild within us, no matter what age we are. So I am your host, Lori Lisai, human design mentor, coach for midlife women, and I'm here to help you use your human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Midlife by Design. Oh my God, I am so excited today to have these wild women with us. Some of my absolute favorite women on planet Earth. I have Dana Stiles and Shayna Cornelius from Dayluna with us, Soul Synarchy. I have Maggie Thomas and Johanneke Kodde with us as well. So the five of us are hopping on. We're going to be talking over each other. It's going to be total chaos, total fun, and we're going to just enjoy our time chatting about human design because we're all human design nerds and talking about the wild woman archetype. So I just want to give us all a brief minute to introduce ourselves, and then we'll start chatting. So I'm going to start with Maggie, since you're on the top of my screen.
All right. I'm Maggie Thomas. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I host retreats. I'm a human design reader, and I have a yoga background where I used to run a school of yoga and certify students. And I also have a medical practice, which I'm stepping out of, and fully embracing a more holistic approach to helping people be inspired and empowered. And for the past couple of decades, I've really been bouncing between the whole linear path, traditional model, and the nonlinear. And now I'm fully embracing that nonlinear path for myself.
Thank you. All right, Johanneke.
Hello, I'm Johanneke Kodde. I'm a GP, physician, or family doctor in the UK. I'm originally from Holland. And a bit like Maggie, I did a conventional route initially, and then through personal circumstances, about 4 years ago, I had almost like a spiritual reawakening. I was already interested in my field and then kind of lost the path a little bit and went more into the conventional route. Got very experienced, and now I'm fully embracing the holistic way of looking at things. And I founded the Body, Mind, Soul Doctor, which is a way of looking at health, starting with the body and the symptoms, but then looking underneath that, all the layers of the emotional and psychological state and the spiritual side of things as well. And I also, in that process, learned about human design, and I'm a human design reader. I also read Akashic records. And I host retreats, workshop talks, whatever. Whoever wants to hear what I got to say, I'm here for it. But I'm also a projector, so I need to sit on my hands a lot to wait and invited, which is the hardest part. That's me.
You, Shayna.
Oh, I just love what you said, Dr. Joe, about being a projector and sitting on your hands. I feel that. And also, I just love learning from all of you amazing women here. I just love everything that you do. So I feel really honored to be here. Thanks for having us. I'm Shayna, Cornelius Nichols. Like, do I say my whole name? I'm Shayna, and I'm the co-founder of Dayluna. Like, what am I? I'm a new mom is really what I am. And so I've just been rebirthed through the mother portal, and my head is barely above ground right now. But when it is, it's fully in human design. So we have a human design podcast. We host retreats as well. We have a membership and a training and a book. And yeah, but right now I'm Isla's mom, and I'm learning how to do that as well as show up on time to my calendar appointments.
Yes, whole new world.
Life skill.
And I'm Dana Stiles. I'm the other half of Dayluna. I'm the other co-founder, human design guide and specialist, author, creator, creatrix, I like to say. We never introduce ourselves in this way. It's actually kind of fun and weird for our two lines, but I really like it. And I like hearing everyone's introductions. It's so fascinating to see the way that we all have such similar interests and passions, but we're also coming from different angles and, different physical locations, different life experiences. So once, like Shayna was saying, I really appreciate being able to learn from all of you. And thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much for being here. If I could go back to myself 5 years ago, I distinctly have this image in my head of wrapping Christmas gifts on my bedroom floor, listening to the Dayluna podcast. I was just binging all of your content, like learn more about human design. And if I could go back and just like whisper in her ear, hey, in 5 years, you're actually going to have a pod and you're going to be chatting with Shayna and Dana, I would just like go back and blow my mind. So thank you so much for being here.
That is so cool. I love that you shared that, because I've had that experience too with podcasts that I used to listen to driving to my old 9-to-5 job, like on my commute. And then, having a conversation with someone, I feel like it's just such proof that when we resonate with someone and we're on the same frequency, it's like we are drawn to each other and we float together on the same levels, on the same waves, and like we'll always be able to attract people who are on that same frequency and who share the same passions and wanting to help the world in the same way. And it's such a beautiful feeling. It feels like coming home when you get to connect with those people that are on your frequency. So it's the feeling is mutual. It's such a pleasure for us too.
So true. Thank you for that. So the three of us, Maggie and Johanneke and I, have been spending a lot of time over the last year diving into this wild woman archetype. And one of the things I think that is interesting is that we are part of the same fractal. We are clearly connected, and you're younger than us, right? We're sort of in this phase where Maggie is the youngest of the three of us, and she's got younger kids. And then Johanneke and I have older children. And we're exploring this wild woman kind of phase. And a lot of my listeners are relatively new to human design. So I'd love to dive into energy types and where the wild woman archetype, how it might express in each of the energy types. And Joe, I actually want to kick it to you to see if you want to talk a little bit, like set the scene for the wild woman archetype, and then we can all just kind of jump in. What do we think? What does it look like for each of the different types to truly embody this wild woman energy?
Yes, I will just set the scene for the archetype, because most people have heard about the maiden, mother, crone triad. Those are really classic archetypes. And actually, there is a phase in between, because you don't really go from mother to crone it doesn't just happen like that. Just like you don't really go from mothering phase in life with high estrogen to menopause just like that. It doesn't happen overnight. There's actually about 10 years where your hormones fluctuate and change and gradually change into a different state. So actually that phase of the transition, that's the phase where I think the wild woman really comes out, and which is an archetype of the throwing off some of the restraints and being a little bit less conventional pleasing. As highly estrogenized, you tend to want to care for everybody, care for your children, care for your friends and family, and do the best for everybody. And you have a lot of energy to do all of that. So you're continually juggling lots of things. And then there comes a phase where your body starts to change and you feel your skin feels different, your gut, you might get anxiety, your mental state changes, you might not think so clearly, and suddenly you really feel very different. And if you see that as a failure, like you're like a bad mother, then you kind of wait till you feel better again eventually, and then you become a crone. It doesn't quite work like that. But if you embrace this wild woman in between, the one who is true to herself, listens to her own needs and intuition, and really starts to say no to those things that maybe a week before or 2 years before she would have said yes to because she had the energy and she had the inclination. And suddenly she finds herself shouting no or getting angry at people around her because actually they are trampling on boundaries that may not have been there, but now they are. And rather than feeling bad, I feel really strongly that the wild woman doesn't need to feel bad about resetting, rearranging the codes in the behavior between her and the people around her, and actually reclaiming that wildness. And then the hot flashes can be the fire that burns away things. And you get the images of the phoenix. And there's all sorts of things you can associate with it. So I love this wild woman archetype. And I think it needs to be front and center of any woman who's going through the perimenopause.
So fascinating. I love hearing. I was going to ask what your interpretation of it is, or the wording that you like to use, because obviously when I hear the words wild woman, from inside of me out, I feel this like initiating, like this remembering or recalling, like something gets really excited within me to hear those words. Like I feel like a wolf howling at the moon, that energy that comes up through you, right? But I think if the average person hears about a wild woman, it could be like a negative connotation, like she's wild, like her hair is messy and she's not following the rules that we tell her to. And maybe she's not perfect and presentable all the time. So it's really interesting that word wild in and of itself, I feel like can be sort of like a keynote that initiates us and triggers that, society telling us to be quiet, to be less seen and less heard, especially as a woman, especially as a mother, especially as an older woman. But really at any stage, I feel like that wild energy has been so suppressed within us. But I've really come to find in my own journey that nature is our greatest teacher and our greatest guide, and that we are nature. So that wild aspect is like letting go of all of the human bullshit that we've been taught and conditioned that represses and suppresses us, and taking our cues from nature, taking our cues from the ocean, taking our cues from the moon being cyclical and not being linear and consistent all the time. Like even just those words, wild woman, without like reading more or hearing more about it, I feel like it evokes such a profound state of wonder and curiosity. Like there's something inside of us that really wants to and is excited to learn and grow when we're talking about that archetype and using that archetype to help us have this conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like even though I just went from the maiden to the mother, this experience has really shown me that like I am an animal. And, feeding my child with my body, like I am an animal. And there's this wildness that comes with that of I can either pretend I'm not an animal and like cover up and be ashamed and not talk about like the real stuff that happens. And I think, I've seen a lot historically of women doing that as they go into menopause too. There's so much about menopause that I have no idea about, that somebody tells me their experience and I'm like, what? Like, I had no idea that that was even a thing, because it's almost as if, our voices get quieter and quieter and quieter as a new generation comes in. Or, one thing I've felt becoming a mother is like, okay, she's now the main character. Like I was the main character in my life, and then I have this daughter, and it's like, I'm now her mother. Like I'm part of her story, her origin story, or like part of her villain origin story if I don't go the right way, right? Like the feeling of like, this is her childhood home. Like this is her main story, main character. And so I think that a lot of times then it creates this dynamic where you step behind the scenes and you quiet, and patriarchy and the society, like we're really taught to just close it down and like not discuss these things. But the wildness of like, I don't give a fuck. Like I'm just an animal and I am embracing all of this craziness and I'm sharing in it and seeing myself and other people who are experiencing the same thing. It's such good medicine. And it's that unleashing that feeds into every other area of your life. And of course, wildness is not pretty and neat and comfortable all the time. That wildness shakes up things, and maybe certain relationships are no longer actually standing on any solid ground and it's time for them to crumble away. Maybe jobs are, maybe, where you live is not conducive to that wild energy. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to like go be crazy in your life and blow up everything, but unleashing that kind of wild spirit within you and setting down those confines will naturally bring some dis-ease that ultimately gets you towards more alignment and more expansion and joy and deeper connections, versus just having that kind of complacent, shut it down, play small kind of energy that we've been taught that we have to have, especially as women.
I love that. I love that, Dana, you named the fact that the wild piece can be maybe misconstrued as negative, or that women who are so used to people pleasing or being the good girls might look at that as a little bit threatening. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with somebody just last week that felt that way. Was like, I'm surprised that you think that being wild is a good thing, and I think I've been thinking about this for so long that now it doesn't even occur to me. I'm like, of course it's a good thing.
Right.
She made a good point. So thank you so much for naming that. And I'm curious, coming back to the human design connection and the types, what do you think? The two of you have done so many readings. So I'm curious if you have some examples or stories to share of different energy types that you feel have embodied this really beautifully.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think that the advice that I'm going to say for each of the 5 types, I feel like could apply to any of the 5 types, right? To all people, because for projectors, obviously, the main thing that is the most rebellious act you could possibly do to society is to rest and to unsubscribe to hustle culture. But for Shayna and I being both projectors, that honestly was like a rebellion against everything that we had ever been taught. It was a rebellion against the qualities that we believed were good or lovable or admirable, which is being hardworking, working harder than anyone else, being the person who shows up earliest and stays latest. And if you're sick, you work through it anyways. And that makes you a good person and a good wife and a good whatever, all of those things. So for us as projectors, honestly, learning how to rest and seeing that as our way of being and seeing the way that our health and our wellness and our immune systems are connected to sleep and rest and taking breaks. Like, it seems so basic. It seems so simple. But for us, it was, I swear, revolutionary to give ourselves that permission. And in my childhood growing up, both of my mom and my stepdad are projectors, which was shocking because they called me lazy my entire life. My stepdad would come and open my door at 10 on a weekend, be like, "Are you still sleeping? Like, you're so lazy." And I was like, as a 10-year-old, like, this is my weekend. I went to school all week long and I can do whatever the hell I want on my Saturday. Like, I just remember thinking, like, even as a kid, like, he's crazy. But then finding out that he's actually a projector and that he was the one that was shaming me so strongly, it was an eye-opening experience for me, because I think for him, he had so much self-shame around that side of him that he was really projecting it out onto my entire family. So what I want to say about rest and wild energy, when you hear the word wild, I feel like it, like I was saying, it's like running in the full moon and like howling at the moon and like swimming naked in the water, which I love all of those things. But also, if we're looking at nature and we're looking at like a lion, for example, and they sleep 20 hours a day and they hunt and mate and all the other things they do for 4 hours a day, like nature doesn't go on these same rigid time structures that we do, even though time and cycles is a huge part of nature, meaning like the lunar cycle and the way that the stars shift throughout the year, our astrological wheel are our seasons. That is our time. So we are designed to be a part of those cycles and seasons, all of us. But we've been so conditioned against attuning to those wild or natural cycles and into this like Gregorian calendar alarm clock waking you up at 5 a.m. when you don't want to. Like, we've all just gotten so far off from living with the true cycles of nature and honoring our circadian rhythm and resting when we need rest, which is so basic and simple. So I want to say that this is so powerful for projectors, for anyone without a defined sacral, but honestly for everyone, because I have met so many generator moms who have a defined sacral, of course, as a generator, that are so burnt out because they don't allow themselves to rest. And they put even more pressure on themselves because they're like, well, I have a defined sacral. I should be a machine and be able to go, go, go at any time. So I really feel like for everyone, reclaiming rest and letting go a little bit of our grip on time restrictions, and like needing to have such a schedule that we stick with no matter what the circumstances are. For everyone, releasing that, I think, is connecting to our inner wild woman, but especially for anyone like a projector or a reflector. And in that same rant, when we're talking about the cycles of nature and the seasons of nature with the moon cycle and the astrological wheel and all of us moving through those energies, and that being sort of like the real time, I want to say, like life's true timing. If you are a reflector, attuning to the moon is the most important thing that you can do, because you truly do operate in a completely different way than 99% of the world as a reflector. And that is huge, right? So even just knowing, like, I don't need to exist within these time constraints and this go, go, go energy that we have. I don't need to exist within the 24-hour day. Giving yourself that permission and attuning more to the moon cycle and seeing your energy change and shift throughout that cycle is huge for a reflector. And it feels nearly impossible at first. When you hear that you're supposed to give yourself a month to choose if you want to say yes or no to this job opportunity, like, it just feels impossible. It feels like all the odds are stacked against you and that there's no way to actually do that in this modern day and age. But if you have that mindset, then surely you'll never do it. And if you can change that mindset and say, well, I'm going to try, I'm going to at least start paying closer attention to the moon every single day. I'm going to gaze at the moon. I'm going to follow where the moon is. I'm going to feel that energy inside of me. Even just doing that, it will start to change things for you. Life will start to slow down to a rhythm that is more aligned with your natural rhythm as a reflector. So once again, it's so important for reflectors, but it's kind of so important for everyone, because we all are under this moon. All of us are affected by her, and her transits throughout the month is a cycle we all experience. And learning about my own, I call it my moon cycle, but my menstrual cycle, and being attuned to the moon. When I heard about this, I think I was maybe 24, and one of my super hippie, crazy friends was like, I always bleed with a full moon. And I had never heard anyone say that before. And I was like, you're lying. I had never heard that. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know it was a thing. I had been on birth control since I was 13 consistently, because I went on for acne, hormonal birth control. And So my moon and my ovulation were not things that I felt. They were not on a natural time frame. They were on a, false time frame. And hearing this woman talk about her bleeding with a moon was like something inside of me activated. Like I didn't believe her, but I also, on a soul level, I gasped with awe and wonder. Like, is that true? Are we these wild women like mirrors of like all of the magic that we see out in nature? And it was such a profound seed that planted in me. And now, of course, it's like, I know so many people that just know that as a fact, but it's so funny that like 10 years ago, only 10 years ago, 1 decade ago, I had never heard anyone talk about it. Never, not a single person on social media, not a single one of my hippie friends at Burning Man, not one person except for this girl, which it just tells you how quickly we're growing and shifting. So I only went through 2 types there. And I think you guys can all see how it's like, yeah, these things apply to everyone, but especially if you're a projector, especially if you're a reflector, tuning into those things are going to be even more powerful, or maybe like the first thing that you should focus on.
Love it. Anybody else want to chime in?
So I think for Mangen, the biggest thing is really tuning into one, what you love doing, really following that, but also recognizing that you're not meant for the linear path, the traditional path, and that it's okay to not follow that path and to go on the nonlinear and just follow that and blaze your own trail. Because it's so key. Like we get so conditioned with what society tells us. And as Mangens, we're just so passionate about different things at any given time. And we can feel like, oh, we're like not doing what everyone else is doing and we're doing something wrong, or we don't have our thing, or we haven't figured out our like one niche, but we're not meant to. Like we're meant to actually cultivate all these little nuggets of wisdom from all the passions that we follow and then create our own way. And it really is a non-linear path. And along that path, I think part of it is also that we can be very people-pleasing, because we're so capable and because we have this like warm and enveloping type of aura, that people tend to ask us things. And it's very easy for us to just say yes, despite what our strategy and authority is telling us. So really getting confident with allowing our throat chakra to be expressed and to say no, to speak our truths and to say that no unapologetically. That is like part of the wild woman, right? And really honoring what we actually want as a Mangen. And if it's in alignment, then yes, great, do the thing. But if it's not, and it's sucking your energy, then it's not going to serve you and you're going to end up in this place of burnout. And I guess that really does apply for anyone, for a Mangen, like just making sure you're really following that nonlinear path if that's where you're being called to, and to notice if you're people pleasing and how much you're saying yes versus no. Stepping into that is going to help you step into that wild woman. And one of the things I would like to think of it, and Joe, you kind of mentioned it, was these archetypes. It's like wearing an outfit, right? Like I think of it as like this good girl outfit. We've been wearing her for decades. And she's cozy and she's form-fitted and she's all soft in all the right spots. And like, it's so hard to take it off, because even like a child wearing a Halloween costume that they love and they don't want to take it off for months, you have to like kind of coax them out of it, right? You can't just like rip them out of it. And that's the same thing for us. It's going to take some time, but it's little baby steps and this awareness around how we're showing up in the world and noticing, okay, am I being submissive? Am I trying not to ruffle feathers? Or am I starting to speak my truth unapologetically? And am I getting confident and clear with where my direction is, what my goals are?
I love that. Yeah, I was like going to say the same for Mangens and generators like that. Saying no is an act of rebellion. When your energy is so used to and like wearing the outfit of saying yes and being amenable or like over giving to everyone else around you and not even knowing, like that being coaxed out of that outfit. A lot of times Mangens and generators don't even know when they would want to say no, because they're just so used to saying yes and doing it and handling things and taking care of everyone. So to really take a step into saying like, okay, do I actually want to say yes here? And if not, like, saying no and just owning it and not feeling guilty about it. With any of the types, I really feel like that removing the shame around resting, around saying no, around being too much, like the shame that we all hold and shame ourselves of, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I slept that much yesterday, or, whatever it is. There's so much internal work that we, and kind of like internal abuse that we do against ourselves that keep us in that outfit, that keep us confined. And definitely, I would say for manifestors, the wildness of not giving a fuck, like truly not caring what anyone thinks, not caring what, like that no shame energy. I definitely have seen that in other manifestors specifically, and it's initiated me to have that in my life. And it feels wild, especially now in this new chapter of my life. I feel genuinely like I don't care. Like I don't care. I haven't blow dried my hair in like literally 6 months. And before I blow dry it, every single time I washed it, like there's just small things that just feel wild. Like I just don't give a fuck. I don't care if I'm in sweatpants. I don't care if I, am messy or am not pleasing to somebody else's eye. I don't care if I sound like an idiot. Like, I just don't care. And it's so liberating, but it also is wild. It's like, oh, I made a mistake. And before I would be like, I can't believe I made that mistake. Do I seem unprofessional? Do I seem like whatever, untrustworthy, or whatever the thing is, that internal shame. And now it's like, yeah, I made a mistake. Like literally, that's it. And that sounds so simple, but it is this act of rebellion against yourself, against like the old outfit that you had on. And I think it takes one little step at a time. So for manifestors, I would say that like no shame kind of vibe would be that wild energy. And then I think we've covered all the types, but I don't know.
Which
I really
add.
Sorry, go ahead.
Going to say, because we've got Laurie here, who's a Cancer and a generator and a mum. And I have personally seen her do all the things to do for all the people until she falls and breaks her arm.
Yeah.
And then suddenly she's like, this is not, I was going to the car to go shopping, Christmas shopping, and I can't. And I broke my dominant hand. I can't do anything. And we're like, yeah, so then you do nothing. And she's like, I can't not do anything. I think you have no choice here, Laurie. You cannot make your men do some stuff. And she's like, yeah, quite an initiation, wasn't it, Laurie?
You literally shopped till you dropped. Like
no, I dropped before I shopped.
Before you shopped, so that you couldn't shop.
Yeah,
dropped before you shopped.
Exactly. And I am, defined route. So I procrastinate on everything. And it was 5 days before Christmas. So that's when I was starting my Christmas shopping, or I thought I was. So yeah, It definitely took me on a whole journey of surrender and being forced actually to say no. So sometimes that's what it takes, which actually leads me to my next question and our resistance to taking off these outfits that have been so comfortable for so many years. And what are some of our favorite tools? Human design has this overarching, amazing system and tool, but within the system, what are some of our favorite tools for getting ourselves out of this comfortable sweatpants outfit and into the wild?
I really like looking at the undefined centers that you might have, because it's a really good place to look at what's meant to be changing in your life and in your day-to-day. Everything else that's defined is consistent for you, but that wildness of like, ooh, I just feel this today and it's not who I was yesterday, or it's not what I felt the day before that. Letting that change, that surrender that's required to move energy through your body, first comes with awareness that, oh, I'm holding on to something and trying to force something. that's not consistent for me, and then feeling it and letting it move through you, I think it can be just such a powerful place to bring in that wildness that is like, you're not trying to put yourself in a box, right? Your undefined centers are changing every single day based on who you're around. So it's literally like taking the lid off the box and all the walls off and just letting that be whatever it's going to be. And sometimes it's weird, and sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it's mean, and sometimes it's like awkward. And being uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable is really like the magic there, because then you learn so much and you just have a deeper connection to life in general. You're not just like coasting in the comfortable spot. Like, you're really feeling life, feeling all of the different things that are available to you all the time, because you now have awareness. So I love looking at that in human design in general, whatever your undefined centers are. And I think for people who are brand new to human design, it can be one of the most impactful places to look at, even more so than type, because telling somebody, you are defined emotionally, you have this emotional wave, or your partner's undefined emotionally, they're amplifying that. That's so powerful. Telling somebody that they have an undefined G center, and that the reason why they feel like, who am I? Where am I going? When am I going to find out who I am? That is normal, and that they can really chameleon and reflect other people around them and really share in that. And that's the path forward for them. It's just so liberating, and it becomes more fun. Like, it's just fun to feel these things, even when it's hard and even when it's overwhelming. It's like fun to feel somebody's crazy emotion, even though that felt scary to me a year ago. Now it's like, whoa, okay, like that was something, like that was spicy, or whatever the flavor is. So I love looking there. Is there anywhere else you would want to add, Dana?
I've been thinking about, as you've been talking, Shayna, which I agree. First of all, out of all of the centers, I think all the time, if this person knew they have an undefined G center, it would change their life. Like that center specifically, I see in people, because I feel like it can just be so confusing with the way that we're currently taught to see ourselves, to have that undefined G center. So I really second that, Shayna. But I've been trying to think about in my own life, if I think about my journey of freeing myself from the constraints of who I thought I should be, who I was like beat into submission to be, what was the tool in human design that changed my life the most? And for me, it really was learning how to make decisions correctly with my authority. And I want to say this because when we meet people who are human design skeptics, they love hearing about all of their gates and their cross of incarnation and all of the things that prove how real human design is. They love hearing about that, but they don't want to hear how to actually change your life and follow your true inner compass, whether you like what it says or not, whether your partner likes what it says or not. And for me, that journey has been the wildest ride, and the thing that has made the most movement in a really meaningful way, because there has been so many times in my path where everything in my mind was like, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this. And my authority's like, it's a yes, bitch. And I'm like, damn it. And then I have to go do that thing, and vice versa. Right? Like it's a surprising journey, but when you start doing it, you look back and you realize that your life before was based on so many expectations of other people. And even now, being a human design reader, being in my human design experiment for so long, I still find myself projecting onto other people, like my friends, what I think is right for them and what I think they should do. For example, I have a friend who's dating this girl, and I was like, no way, bro. Like, she is not right for you. And he kept asking me, do you think she's right for me? And I was like, follow your authority. Here's how it works. This is what it feels like, and thank goodness I shut my mouth about my opinion, and I told him how to follow his authority, because a year later, I found out that him following his authority, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't what I saw for him, but he was right and I was wrong. And only he knew what was right for him about dating this person. And all of the signs from my projector, little mosquito, over obsessively analyzing person, like I was like, no, this person is right for you and this person's wrong. And here's all the reasons. And I made a spreadsheet, and like I was ready to present him the evidence. And the only thing that could really tell him something so huge as who is this person you're going to be in a relationship with? Who are you going to be in love with? Who are you going to potentially, they're thinking about starting a family together. And it's like, thank goodness he listened to himself against my nosy ass that had all of these pros and cons on a mental plane, right? And that's how life really is. We are so conditioned to be responsible, to make sense, to do things that we can explain to other people, to follow the rules and the structures. And we don't realize that that robs us of our truth. And we don't realize that we never know what is best for someone else. You're the only person who can feel your inner compass. That's crazy. That's crucial. Like if we could really, really, really understand that on a cellular level, our world would change. Because here I am admitting that even like 7 years into my human design journey, I'm still sometimes project onto people the mental thing that I think makes sense. And I have to remember to let that go and let that person listen to their inner compass, because that's going to be the thing that guides them to the place that is the truest for them, outside of all the fear, outside of all the projections, outside of all of the confinements and limitations and rules that society has passed on you. So I know that people want to hear something probably more specific, like what tool in my human design is going to help me unleash my life and unleash my inner power. But I honestly think that one is the one. And it's such an art form. It is not a science. It is a science, but it's like, it's an art form because you're the only person who can feel it. You know, the individual is the only person who can feel their inner compass through their inner authority. And so for me, it's like, how do we create more conversations around that? How do we make it more interesting for people? How do we get better communication to help people understand the felt sensation and the frequency shift of their authority? Because that's the thing out of everything else in their chart that I think is going to unleash their life into its true aligned place.
I love that. And I actually have a follow-up question, Dana, because you are an emotional projector, right?
Yeah.
And so Ross says you only get 60-ish% clarity or whatever, but you clearly have figured out what it feels like in your body. So I'm curious if you can describe it for the audience, because 50% of us are emotionals. And
thank you so much for asking this question, because this is one of my missions to redefine and to share with the world, because I get where he's coming from with that phrase, and that because how it works with emotional authority specifically is that when you are on a high, everything sounds good. That same situation sounds a little bit better, sounds a little bit easier, sounds like a little bit more luck could sneak in there. And that same situation when you're on a low, it's like, there's no way. Everything is fucked. Everything is going to fall apart. There's so much doubt. There's like, nothing is lucky. Everything is like pessimistic. And those polarizations, like you remember being in both places. So self-doubt is huge for anyone with emotional authority, because it's like, I literally felt completely differently than this yesterday or this morning. And that's confusing for our mind. So learning that you just have to write it out and learning that you cannot access your clarity in this moment is such an act of surrender. Because when you're, let's say for me, for example, a business partner with Shayna, she has a completely different authority than me. She can just talk it out and then hear her truth in that present moment. Sometimes, boom, she's got it. She said 3 sentences and she knows. And I'm like, that's great. I still have no idea. And that is, it's hard because I'm putting a pause on her process. And then I have to like go be on my own and like go cry in the rain for 2 days. And then like the sun comes out and then I finally have my truth. Like it's such an inner journey and I'm such a hot mess and all over the place. So embracing that, first of all, and just being in for the ride has been one of my greatest spiritual practices. Like, did my soul really choose to have emotional authority? Yes, it did. And 50% of the population has that. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is, when you have come to a neutral place, you are completely emotionally neutral and you've waited out your wave, and you think about this decision and you're asking yourself, will this make me happy to do this? On a cellular level in my body, do the cells of my body feel like, what does happiness feel like to you? For me, it feels like this bubbly warmth, almost like the sun. Like every cell in my body is like smiling. There's this like, almost like sometimes I see the image of a lotus blooming, like the flowers opening towards the sun, but it's all like very felt, right? None of this is in my mind. Or I might feel none of that. And it's like, it's something that should make me happy. But in my body, I just feel kind of blah. It just is like a okay, mediocre. And that's obviously my authority telling me no. So I really like to tune into the felt sensation. And I actually really like to say that for every single authority. I think it's really important to find the wording and the frequency and the felt sensation in your body. Over time, I've gotten so much better at feeling it right away, but it still is such a pain in the ass to follow my authority that I have to remember to take the time. I have to remember to close my eyes and feel in my body when I am neutral. And so when I get that clarity, it's either like 100%, this is going to make me happy. It's a yes. If it's anything less than 100%, I'm just not sure. I give myself more time. So in that way, I do believe that I reach 100% clarity about, will this make me happy? And then I go for it because I'm crystal clear that I did that. Now, 1 week later, after I made the decision, here comes the doubt again in the low of my wave. Like, did I fuck up? Did I make the wrong decision? Because this isn't working out. Did I actually choose this? And I just have to trust that if I use my authority correctly in the present moment, I know that whatever challenges are arising are meant for me. They're correct. They're right for my life. And there's been so many times like, did I use my authority on that? Yes, I did. Okay, so I'm just going to put my doubt and my disbelief and my questioning myself on the back burner. And I'm going to have that spark of trust at my core. And I'm going to allow the doubt to be there as the observer mind, but I'm not going to allow that doubt to come in and question, did I actually have clarity or not? So I know that was very long-winded, but the feeling of doubt is huge in my life, even when I do have complete clarity. So I think that's where that is really coming from. And for anyone with emotional authority to know that and to become friends with that and to not get scared of your doubt, but to instead observe it objectively and to get really clear about how clarity feels for you, even though it might look so different than for other people. I know that was a really long answer. I could talk about emotional authority forever on all stages of my wave. But I'm curious, who else has emotional authority here? I forget. Okay, all of us. Shayna, you're the only one. So how do you ladies feel about what I just shared with my journey? How do you guys feel?
I love what you said. I think it's like hang on. I would say to piggyback off of what you said, something that was really supportive for me that you guys taught me was when I'm in a high or a low and someone presents something to me, to instead of just jumping in and being like yes or no, to actually say, oh, that sounds really great. However, can I like get back to you in a couple of days? Like that has been so transformational in my life, to give myself the permission to have the time and to give them somewhat of an answer immediately without like totally ignoring it or anything. So, and I think it gives people permission to be like, oh, okay. And I feel like I got really great feedback from it. Like people were very receptive to it. It's just really been helpful so that I can actually take that 24 hours that I need to come to my neutral place and then tune in to see if I have the energy or the interest in doing that thing. Versus in the past, I would often just jump right in and then the next day be like, oh my God, what did I do?
Especially, I would think as a sacral being, like you have that sacral telling you one thing, and then you have to wait for your emotional authority. And I just want to say, Maggie, that I love the analogy of being a kid with a really cozy Halloween costume and you don't want to take it off. And that's really sweet and it really resonates with me. And I almost feel like the costume I was wearing my whole life that I was taught to put on around answering a question or making a decision. I was just taught that like, if you don't answer right now, it's rude. You look like an idiot. You look like you don't know what you want. And that was like the costume that I would wear. So I felt like bad. Like I felt like I was going to get in trouble if I needed more time. And so I literally had to take that costume off of myself and put on this new costume that was comfortable, being like, let me get back to you on that. And it was like such a hard thing for me to shift into. I don't know why, but learning how to say those words, putting on that new costume and being like, this is the new thing that I say. And it works so much better for everyone, actually. it was huge for me. So I love that you had that same experience. It's so like, even now to this day, sometimes I tell people, let me sleep on that. And I see their face look a little offended. And I'm like, you'll learn that that's how life works. Like 50% of us are going to start giving you that answer. So here we go.
We have to be the change, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Dana, and I love the way you're describing the way, because I'm currently in a big kind of life conundrum decision-making process. And
yeah,
I basically need a lot of time. And I've also come to realize that and I'm trying to explain this to people. I can literally feel something one day and completely the opposite the next day. And those are both truths. And like, how's that even possible? I'm like, well, I don't know, but it is. And I'm going through it and I can feel it and it shifts all the time. And then there is because I'm split definition, there's my head, ajna and throat that are doing the analyzing. And I've also come to realize that even though they're not for the decision making, they still need to get what I'm doing as part of that process. So I'm doing this kind of bodily decision making, emotional wave, root and spleen thing. And then at the same time, my head's constantly kind of analyzing and wants to be in on it, because otherwise it also feels it's not quite complete, particularly for the big decisions, which is I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's so true. And I have triple split definition. So I feel the same. Like I'm literally like, I have to go to a coffee shop. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to have a single conversation, but I need to be there around a bunch of people's auras to just click into gear. And sometimes it takes me so long because it's like one side of my body processed it, but the other didn't. And now I'm back to square one. And for something really big, it could take me a couple of months easily. Sometimes it is shorter. But have you heard the analogy before that, like, if we think of someone with sacral authority, let's say, as a photographer, and they come across a flower and they take the one photo and they're like, got it, done. That's how the flower looks. And then someone with emotional authority is this photographer that comes in the morning light and they take the picture, and then they come at night and they take a picture and they're like, it's two different flowers. And they want to see the picture from every single angle. And every time you take that snapshot, it's, the phrase, there's no truth in the now. And you were just saying like, yeah, but it feels true in that moment. It's like, I almost think of it as like a snapshot that you take, and you're kind of robbing yourself if you don't allow yourself to fully lean into seeing that photo in that light. And it's interesting because we have the tendency to attach onto things because we're so afraid of letting go, or so afraid of change, or so afraid of dying, both physically and metaphorically. So when we really let ourselves look at something in one light, at least I'll speak for myself, I feel sometimes like attached to that, and it's hard to let go and keep moving to a completely new light with a completely new looking flower. And learning how to do that has been so good for me. Of course, it's helped me make better decisions, but it's helped me become a better human too, because I've learned how to hold so many different truths at one time without minimizing one of them, without feeling, a scarcity mindset about how many truths are possible.
But it's hard to explain to a non-emotional being, though.
So they have their one picture. They're like, this is what the color of the flower is. They're like months of study at all times of day to be taking my photo. I'm curious for you, Lori, how do you feel hearing all of this?
Yeah, well, I have my emotional, my sacral, and my spleen and root defined. So I have a lot of in the now coming in. So my work has been in not jumping right into things when I get excited, because I have seemingly endless enthusiasm sometimes. So slowing my roll and learning, like what Maggie was saying, to just say, I need some time. This sounds amazing right now. I think that has been a big piece of my journey. And then also the point that you made about that self-doubt, I think is also something that I still struggle with and get into my head around. What if, what photo did I not take of the millions of photos during the 24-hour period? Which one did I miss? And is this the right decision? So that's just a journey of feeling comfortable in my decision-making process when I make the final decision. And I love the idea of what makes me happy, that guiding light of just what feels right in your body.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like a big part of my, I want to say now wild woman journey, but also human design journey has been being okay disappointing people and following my inner authority because I know that that's going to make me happy. And then reporting back to people like, yeah, I decided to quit that, or I decided to move, or I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. And dealing with that disappointment caused more doubt for me, right? Like someone is so disappointed. You're like, oh shit, did I make the right decision? And, it's just hard to swallow that disappointment. And then later on, you would see that everything played out in the highest good and that like that person needed to be disappointed because then it sent them on this path of reawakening to something new. And like, it just kind of reminds me of like when I was a teenager being with like my boyfriend, it was so dramatic. Like, I know we're not meant to be together, but I don't want to leave him. And then like realizing that it was just messed up for him to be with someone who didn't want him. You know what I mean? So it's like with our authorities, it's like, if we're afraid to disappoint people, we're robbing people of what's right for them. We're robbing them of the growth that they're meant to have. We're robbing them of the alignment that they're meant to have. And so like disappointment is actually a part of life that we need to learn how to embrace more, because a lot of times that's going to be on the path of happiness. And I feel like people don't talk about that. Like, like it's like being happy is the opposite of disappointing people and people being mad at you or surprised about what you're doing or whatever it is. But for me, that's been something that I've really had to see, like happiness in the long term, happiness internally in a centered way, not happiness because this person is giving me validation or approval or because they like what I'm sharing. And those are two very different things. So like learning how to connect with the frequency of happiness in my own body instead of like in an external way was also something that was really big for me.
Actually, something you touched on there, Dana, you talked about just how like disappointing people can rob them of this experience. But at the same time, I feel like it robs us of standing in our own truth and taking that truth and being our authentic selves. Like Glennon Doyle says that our purpose is to disappoint everyone around you except for yourself. And I love that statement. Like I even teach it to my kids because it's like in any scenario, it reigns true. Like society has conditioned us that we need to be that people pleaser and that sweetness and not ruffle any feathers. And that's the good girl archetype. But this is about stepping into that wild woman and being able to say, like, I'm okay with disappointing you as long as I honor my own truths. And it doesn't have to be in this mean and conniving way. It can be in this beautiful, kind, calm manner and just in this like unapologetic form. That's really honoring ourselves. And I think with that, it teaches the people that you're disappointing that they can also do that moving forward, right? Like they're learning a lesson at the same time.
Absolutely. I'd be curious to look up Glennon Doyle's Human Design. I wonder if you have, like, I feel like she's an emotional man gen, but I mean, you never know.
She's a man gen.
Yeah, gotta be. And I love her. It's so true. I've heard her say something before too about when you liberate yourself, you liberate other people automatically. Like it's just a natural repercussion and such a man gen or manifestor thing to say. But once again, it applies to everyone because I definitely feel like in my own life, giving myself permission to be who I am, that disappointment then oftentimes is actually a catalyst that liberates other people. Like my mom, for example, my mom was like so scared when I quit my 9-to-5 job and started this. She's like, what are you doing with the system that nobody's heard of? That is like, literally, it doesn't make any sense. Like, how are you going to even tell people what you're doing? She just had so much fear. And I had to be okay with that and let her have her fear and not make it deter me from listening to my truth or make that self-doubt that then came in because like my mom is so afraid this must be bad. And then later on, years later, to see the way that I live my life has liberated her has been really, really beautiful. It's been such a gift. And I also think about the lineage of women in my family a lot and the work, like my mom was born in 1955 and the way that she has changed her life from her mother, who was born in 1920. And then the way that I have changed my life from my mother, like I really, really feel that any work that we do, we never do alone. We're standing on the shoulders of the women who came before us and the work that they've done and the fears that they've dismantled and the bravery that they've had. And it's really cool to see now, like, Shane, me being an aunt and Shayna's daughter, and like the future generation, and having this baby girl that we know her design from the moment she's born. And we're like, okay, she's a quad left and she has this, and like we know all her whole chart and all the things. It's just so cool to see our interconnectedness. And I feel really grateful to be a woman in this time. I think that it's a really special time to be a woman. And I just feel like I've waited a lot of lifetimes to be here now in this moment, even though the world is absolutely crumbling and falling apart. Like, it's also the rising. And so I have to fight myself up sometimes because I'm like, why am I here? What did I choose this time frame for? Like, what? All the things. But when I think about women and our empowerment and helping one another and guiding one another and being born in this time, it feels really exciting and like a true blessing. I mean, all of us here are going to retreats, creating retreats, gathering together with women. It is so powerful and beautiful and special. And I think all the time about when I'm in retreat, either my own or someone else's, I think about my grandma who never did a single thing for herself. She never went on a vacation. She never got a massage. She never danced naked under the moonlight. I guarantee, never once in her life. I guarantee that. And I think about her all the time, like how, even though she was a successful woman and she raised her kids and had a good life, just the freedom that she didn't get, that then me as her granddaughter, because of like my mom and everything in between, the movement that we've been able to make, it's like amazing. And going back to what I was saying of my cycle and not knowing the moon is connected to our moon cycle, 10 years ago, like the world is changing so quickly. And it's because of individuals standing up for themselves, liberating themselves, but then also that chain reaction. When we liberate ourselves, we liberate other people. When we're brave enough to disappoint people, we actually step into our purpose and catalyze them living their purpose as well. Like, our actions really do echo out and have such a profound impact. So I really want to thank you all for having this retreat, hosting this conversation, the name and the words wild woman being spoken and being put out into the universe. I just feel like it's such an initiating thing that people really need at this time.
And you've done such a beautiful job. I mean, this whole conversation has been so wonderful, but I really appreciate how you've been able to bring into words what the wild woman archetype looks like through the lens of human design with some examples. And I think one of the things that's coming out of this for me is this curiosity about even shifting archetypes in this time. Are we redefining archetypes even from maiden, mother, wild woman, crone? Is wild woman coming into our lives younger and younger as the generations come up because we're more self-aware?
Chip in there with my daughter because she's 16 now, but when she was 12, she became very unwell, anxiety, tics. And I discovered quite soon after she's a manifester. But she was always this good girl. She was shy. She was nice. She was a pleaser. She's a Cancer as well. She was very caring for everybody. And it was only when she got really ill and decompensated that I realized she was the inverse version of a manifester. She wasn't angry. She was always holding it all in. So to be able to liberate the wild woman in my, teenage daughter who was coming in her first moon, and to tell her to stay in bed, even if school, didn't like it when she was coming on her cycle, and to tell her to take rest, to tell her to follow her urges, to tell her to not care about what other people think about her, and for her to be able to do that within the scope of a few years, go from a completely shy, completely shut down child to a teenager who genuinely doesn't really care what other people think anymore. And she's only 16 now. A complete split over. And, just been very grateful and very humbled to be able to witness that and somehow be a little bit of a guiding, have human design to help me guide her in that. That's just, and it feels like she's really young, but she's already wilder, I think, than I was. because she's already caring less about what society's expectations are. She's got her own high standards. We're still working on that bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I think a lot of the advice that we hear in human design, like, for example, I'm like, for projectors, you connect with your wild woman by resting. Like, it's so simple. But for someone to tell you that rest is good to honor your body, these seem like such salt of the earth, normal things that we should be saying. But the fact that they're radical it's funny, but it's also like, it truly is. You are going to get a message from your school being like, why wasn't your child in class today? And you're gonna be like, they were on their cycle. And the teacher's gonna be like, were they at the doctor? Do they get a doctor's note? And so like, even that small little act of rebellion to just reclaim our natural state, like, it's huge. And to see parents that know human design, all of you here, it's so inspiring to me. There's not my best mark of how meaningful human design is the way that children respond to their design. I love seeing it, like, to say something that is true for them and then to see their reaction. They're like my real meter. I'm like, okay, this shit is real. It helps. It works. The proof is in the pudding because like meeting teenage manifestors and then sharing with them about their design to see the way it changes their entire being. It is the coolest thing I've ever seen. They're my harshest critic manifestors in general. So when I get a teenage manifestor that resonates with human design, it just makes me feel so excited for the way that we're going to be able to limit unhelpful conditioning and not self in the future. And it's like, you know, all of the moms that are showing up, that have shown up for yourself, that have done the work for themselves, and then are passing this information down in a really embodied way. Like, it's so beautiful. And there's so many of us doing it. And I think more and more people are wanting to. They want to support their kids for their true nature. It's just like, how? So I think that's what it's so beautiful that we have so many tools, but like human design to be able to guide people in that.
For sure. We lost one of us to momming duties, so Shayna had to pop off. But I wanted to give you a little bit of time here at the end, Shayna, to talk about this beautiful retreat that you have coming up to Egypt, and also to thank you once again for bringing the three of us together at your retreat in April. Such a life-changing experience for all three of us. We would not be on the journey that we're on right now together had it not been for you and Shayna. So thank you so much. And tell us about magical Egypt.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited. We're going to Egypt for a 2-week expedition. This is going to be a totally different type of retreat for us in that we're going to be moving around from place to place and going to private tours of the temples. And we're going to be going on a Nile riverboat, a sailboat through the Nile. And so all of our retreats, when we talk about being a wild, brave woman and following your authority, even when your mind is like, that seems like really hard, that's how all of our retreats have been. It's like truly spirit-led, I want to say, through our inner authorities. And this retreat in Egypt is no exception. It came together so quickly, and our authority, everything inside of our bodies had 100% clarity. We're doing this in April, which is very soon. And, answering that call has felt like such a beautiful wild ride. We've both said that we feel like a Pegasus with like rainbow sparkles flying behind us, because it's like, okay, we're doing this against all odds, against all time frames. But yeah, we have just a couple of spots left, but going to Egypt and connecting with ancient wisdom at this time feels really important, because we are getting closer and closer to 2027, to this paradigm shift. And all of us were just chatting before recording that as 2025, the calendar year changes, we're in the year of the snake, we're in a 9-year, we're in a year of endings. We're going to see a lot of shedding. We're going to see a lot of crumbling. We already have been, and it's going to continue. And this is an opportunity to rebuild the world that we want to build. This is the most important time, in my opinion, to be really brave, to be really intentional, to share your gifts, even though it's not easy. You know, with our economy and how hard it is to provide for yourself, it is not easy to follow your inner authority and to share your gifts, but it is so important. I believe that on the highest truth. It is the most important thing. And once again, one of the greatest acts of rebellion can be like not giving into scarcity mindset. To pay to go on a retreat costs a lot of money, but it's one of the greatest investments I've ever made for myself in my entire life. To host a retreat is challenging financially. There's a lot that comes together, but it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So for me, it's like everything inside of us has just been calling us to gather with women, to have these containers where we're connecting through human design, because it amplifies all of us who come into that container in such a powerful way. And with this Egypt retreat, it's about doing all of those things while we're connecting with really, really, really ancient wisdom, with a time on planet Earth that is so mysterious, and there's a lot of questions about it, but no doubt there is this divine, feminine, mystical power that was known and was held at a more ancient time. And it's coming back in. And there are those of us who are being called to connect with that ancient wisdom and ancient divine feminine knowing, and really anchor that into this new world that we're creating. So for anyone listening, I just want to plant the seed with you to ask yourself what ancient wisdom you have been called to. And what I mean by that, like when you see any symbol, maybe it's a spiral, maybe it's a stone circle, or even something like fairies, and you're connecting with like that Celtic ancient Avalon energy, but to just pay attention, what are the symbols and the gods or goddesses that just attract you, and you keep seeing them, you keep thinking about them. When you see them, something inside of you just feels like this mystical awe or wonder, because wherever that's happening, I guarantee is a piece of ancient wisdom that's wanting to come through you to help guide us in the new world that we're creating. And I think that that's really important, because we're not alone in what we create moving forward. Like we were talking about all women being connected and standing upon the shoulders of the women who came before us. That is true for us in this new world that we're building as well. There are ancient ancestors that are supporting us and guiding us through their wisdom. We are able to access that and remember that and anchor that in. And I think one of the most important things is being connected to nature, being connected to nature's wisdom, and really letting that be at the forefront of what we build. And when we follow these ancient wisdom calls within us, I think it really unlocks that within us. So whether you come on our retreat to Egypt, or whether you go on your own journey of just following the symbols that have been calling you and anchoring in that ancient wisdom, I really feel like that's one of the most grounding things that we can focus on in a time of a lot of uncertainty, and in a time where we need to be grounded, because we also need to be brave in what we're creating moving forward.
So true. Yeah.
And I think also we felt that, didn't we, in Costa Rica, when we were preparing for the retreat that we're hosting, that the jungle was wilding us. We were there, and we were every hour we were feeling wilder. We felt like the name we'd already created was initiating us deeper into the jungle and the nature and the wildness of it. So the elements and everything we use and fuse into it kind of has come organically up through the nature that we were in. And that felt really powerful. So, using our authority, which we did, and then going to the jungle and I'm feeling all this element in it, felt so divinely guided, that there really wasn't anything else we could do, I think. And I feel really strongly. And it's now holding on to that vision, holding on to that faith and trust that was guided, and therefore that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. And all of you now knowing that we all have emotional waves, that when you're in a low in your wave, you're like, what did I feel in the jungle? And why am I going, just that doubt comes in. But it makes me so happy to hear you say that, because that is a feeling that I felt as well, that when you follow your authority, it's like these bigger pieces come together in a way that your mind could have never foreseen. But when you're there feeling it, it is undeniable, and it's truly magic. And the world needs more of that. But it requires listening to our intuition and trusting it, listening to our inner compass and trusting it, and carrying through even when things are challenging, even when things are unexpected. Like, it's not the easier path. Otherwise, everyone would be living at retreat all the time because it's so fun and awesome. But it's definitely, I think, such a strong form of medicine the world is needing right now. And if spirit is sort of like calling you through that inner feeling that you have, answering that call and showing up and putting all, I just feel like it's such a blessing that's really going to change the world. And Shayna and I met in college, and we went on this whole spiritual journey together as young adults. And when we went to our friend's retreat in Costa Rica, like, we weren't hosting it, we were attending a retreat. That was actually the moment where we were like, I'm done playing small. I'm done subscribing to a life that feels so blasé. I want to feel this alive all the time. The magic that we felt at that retreat, it's like, this is actually the frequency that I want to attune to and I want to bring into in my life. And it's like, thank goodness for retreats. I feel like retreats saved my life. And I feel like they do that for so many of us. The power of gathering together and with women, of being in that nature medicine, of it all being divinely led by the leaders who have followed their inner authority. Like, it is potent. So I'm really grateful for my journey, for all the experiences that I've had, and for all of the people who are going to attend our retreats, your retreats in the future. I just feel like it's really powerful medicine and such a powerful, magical act of resistance that's really needed at this time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time today and for your wisdom in talking about the wild woman archetype. And I just love listening to the frequency of your voices. It just warms my heart. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Midlife by Design. I hope that this episode gave you some things to think about in terms of letting your wild woman loose, no matter what age you are, and helping the women around you to do the same. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend. Leave me a rating. 5-star is amazing. It helps to it gets the word out there so that other people can hear the pod as well. And we would love to have you at the Wild Women by Design retreat. It's happening in March, and we're making it a wraparound experience where we are building community and supporting you both before and after the actual retreat experience. So if you are interested in that, we will leave the link in the show notes. And Dana said that there were 2 spots left in the Egypt trip. However, you'll have to check. I will drop the link in the show notes for their retreat as well, but they may be sold out. If, however, they are sold out, you can always access their other amazing offerings. Really, everything they put out is so beautifully done. So thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. And as we close, I'm sending you the strength to release what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and clarity to be who you came here to be.